So, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for part two in our series with Hermab. Today, we are going to be discussing interview techniques for recent graduates. We are joined by Miss Anjanette Brathwaite, who has over 15 years of human resource and talent acquisition experience. She has worked within the private sector throughout the Caribbean and in global organizations within North America. Anjanette joined Hermab in 2015 and held various roles and assisted with several committees. Her most recent appointment was treasurer for the 2019, 2020, and 2020-2021 fiscal years. Anjanette is joined by Ms. Shakira Ford and Ms. Alicia Simmons. Shakira is a learning and development professional who's committed to combining her experience as a theater practitioner with her knowledge and skills in the area of business psychology to transform traditional training and development models. She provides engaging participatory learning experiences through the use of role play, simulation, and other forms of experiential methods. Alicia is a learning and development specialist who has a driving force to coach and mentor teams who are desirous in developing and achieving personal and professional goals. Her professional objective is to continually assist in the development and continuous improvement of the greatest asset of any organization, its human capital. As a proud Rotarian, she lives by the motto service above self. We are going to get today's discussion going by starting with Ms. Shakira Ford, and she will tell us a bit about the do's and don'ts of the interview process. Shakira, over to you.
Showcase your skills to the employer. Also, proofread your CV, proofread it again, get your friends to proofread your CV because they may see mistakes that you might have overlooked. So just make sure that all the typing errors, the grammatical errors, all of that is null and void, so to speak, on your CV. Because sometimes or applicants, may state that they're detail oriented, and then you have a whole set of grammatical errors on your CV, and the recruiter might be like, okay, well, that's not shown on the CV itself. So just make sure that you proofread your CV. Give a heads up to your references. Make sure that you get in contact with them and let them know that they may be receiving a call from an organization you might have applied to, just to prepare them for that. Also, keep your resume updated. You never know when an opportunity may present itself, so that you may have to, hand in a CV on the spot, so to speak. So always make sure that you keep your resume updated. The don'ts of resume writing. Please do not misrepresent your education or job. If you've never heard about Excel, do not write, I'm a proficient Excel user. It will showcase in your skills, either when you get the job or during the interview, that you may have lied, and that's already grounds for termination. Do not include each detail of your secondary education if you are a university graduate. So yes, you can state, which secondary school you went to, but you do not have to list each CSC that you would have obtained during that time. You don't have to get too personal on your CV. Any information that the recruiter needs, they will ask during the interview. So you don't need to go into in-depth details about your age, about your height, about your date of birth. Those are grounds, to open bias, unconscious or conscious bias during the interview process, and you don't want that. You don't have to worry about using exact dates. You can use the month and the year, but to specify the day, when you were employed for your previous work experience, that might not be needed, and it's really difficult to remember all of that information. You do not have to experiment with crazy formatting. Let your skills and your experience speak for itself, and keep to a simple, easy to read format. Also, you don't have to give reasons for leaving your job. that's something that will probably come up in the interview if it is necessary. You don't have to include that on your CV. So moving forward.
Shakira, can I just also add?
Yeah.
Were you finished or you're
No, I'm finished, yeah.
Okay. And just also to add to the resume, because of we're such in a virtual environment and technology driven also environment, with your email, also put any social media tags that you're on. So if you have a LinkedIn profile, definitely Facebook. Well, we can always check as recruiters, we go directly to your LinkedIn profile. And we can talk a little bit more about that later on in the presentation.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get into the meat of the matter. What is an interview? Can anyone answer this question? What is an interview? If you want to type it into the chat as well, you can feel free to do so as we talk about what an interview is and if you've ever experienced an interview. Okay, I'm not seeing any responses. That means we've come to the right forum then. So let's go into what is an interview. An interview is a conversation with a prospective employer to assess the interviewee's suitability for a particular role within their organization. So basically the main purpose for an interview is for the interviewer to assess your personality, your skills, your experiences during a relaxed conversation for them. You may be a bit nervous, but it should be as relaxed as possible. You know, just get comfortable so that you can give of your best during the interview. Types of interviews you may encounter. There are many different types of interviews that you may encounter, and you can go into the chat as I discuss each one to see which interview you would have encountered before. So we have first the individual face-to-face interview. That's the most popular interview that there is, and it basically involves the interviewer and the interviewee in a discussion. A group interview. This might be a bit more intimidating for the candidate. This involves an interviewer with a group of candidates to just assess, you know, communication skills, interpersonal skills, how well they work with others in a team, and basically who stands out from the crowd. After the group interview, then you may be asked to go into the individual face-to-face interview, but they will start with the group interview just to save time and to see basically who stands out from the crowd. We have the panel interview as well, another intimidating interview, usually used with really important or competitive roles. And it usually includes about 3 to 5 interviewers and a candidate, an interviewee. And they will basically ask questions based on the interviewers will basically ask questions based on their skills and their role within the organization to the interviewee. It could be a bit intense, but it is to, you know, get different perspectives of the interviewers so that they can make a sound decision amongst themselves. Then we have the competency-based interview. And this is basically to assess your skills, your skill set. So some questions may be, you know, how do you handle situations on the job? Or, you know, tell them about a time that you would have solved the problem, and if you made any mistakes during that time and how you learned from those mistakes. So it's basically to assess your skill set. We also have the stress interview. As the name suggests, it is a stressful interview for the candidate. It's usually used with persons with particular skills like pilots or medical technicians, but it can also be used as well in a traditional interview to just see how best you would handle pressure and stress on the job. We have the behavioral interview, and this interview is basically used to predict future behavior based on your past experience, because the saying is that how you reacted before in your past will predict your future success. So the behavioral interview usually helps the interviewer to just, again, assess your skill set and see what you would be able to bring to the table. We also have the telephone and video interview, which is becoming a bit more popular, especially with our current circumstances. Virtual interviews are now used, to assess the candidates as well, and also to just, figure out. It would include the competency-based interview, the stress interview, and the behavior interview, but it would be more virtual. There are some things to consider during this interview as well, which we will touch on later down in the presentation. And finally, there is the exit interview. And this interview basically happens when an employee is ready to leave the organization. It is the best way for the interviewer or the employer to find out how they can improve the organization to attract other qualified candidates. So they would ask the interviewee, why they're leaving, first and foremost, and how they can improve the organization. Is there anything you want to add to this, Anjanette?
No, I'm good.
You're good? Okay. All right, moving forward. If there are any questions you have based on these types of interviews, you can also place it in the chat. All right, dressing for success for the interview. For starters, be well groomed. Ensure that your clothes are neatly pressed and you just present yourself well to the interviewer. Be well dressed. No need to overdo it. No need to have a big set of hoops on or tight clothing. Simple but professional is best. Clean scent, but never overpowering. We ladies like to, all over the place when we're putting on our perfume, but we have to take into consideration that the interviewer may have allergies, and we don't want to have that distract from the discussion. Simple jewelry, as I would have suggested. Fresh breath. I laugh at this one because we had a little debate about this one. All we're saying is, no need to eat a garlic sandwich before attending the interview. Make sure that you have a fresh breath and nothing distracts from the conversation. Minimal makeup / natural looking. I know we like our big false eyelashes and our rainbow eyebrows and eyeshadows, but you can leave that out for the interview. Again, just keep it simple and natural looking. Neutral hair color. Black or brown is best, but you would know based on your research and the culture of the interview if you already have your hair dyed and if it would be accepted. Okay, moving forward. Any questions on that again? You can put it in the chat. How to prepare for the interview. This is another thing to think about when going into your interview. So research the company and the industry. Do your research. You may be asked questions based on the company profile, and they expect you to do your research beforehand. Also, doing your research helps to, express to the employer how you can add value to their company. Know where it is located, of course, and plan to get there at least 10 to 15 minutes before the interview, just to cancel out anything that could happen either on your way there or whilst you are there. Know the person that you are going to meet. They may not have left their name, on the email when they sent it to you, but you can also do your research again. You can go on LinkedIn to find out who the recruiter is. You can also do a Google search. You can call the company as well to find out the name of the person that will be interviewing you. Also think about possible questions that they may ask you and how you will answer them. Obviously being as honest as possible. Make sure to get a good night's rest before the interview. Clean up your social media accounts. I know this is a ticklish topic, cleaning up your social media accounts, but the reality of the situation is that recruiters are now doing even further research on you in terms of looking at your Instagram and your Facebook. And they're looking for someone who can represent their brand and represent their company. And if you have questionable things on your social media, that might cancel you out, even though you may have the skills and the experience needed for the job. So if you know you need to clean up your social media accounts and you're really serious about job hunting, ensure that you do what you need to do to be able to get a fair chance at getting the job. Create or update your LinkedIn account. This is also another important factor. If you don't have a LinkedIn account, create one. This is another way that you can apply to jobs on LinkedIn, seek out recruiters, maybe seek people that are in your field to ask a question. LinkedIn accounts, there are the new way to just get yourself out there, put yourself out there, and look for companies that you may be interested in. Work with your CV or resume and the advertisement you saw in your portfolio. Not all recruiters may ask for your CV, but some may ask for your CV, and you want to be able to be prepared. I remember the first interview that I went to, the recruiter asked me for my CV and I did not have it, because in my mind I was like, I sent it to you on email, we are to par on that, but they asked for it and I didn't have it. I didn't get the job. I guess they probably figured that I was unprepared. I never made that mistake again. Make sure you walk with your CV. And finally, have at least 3 to 5 relevant questions prepared to ask after the interviewer is finished asking you questions. So we're going to work on that today. We have our HR recruiter on hand, Anjanette Brathwaite, who will take this activity, the lead in this activity, and you can just think about questions that you may want to ask the interviewer and if they would be relevant. So you can take 3 to 5 minutes. You can take a break here to either ask vocally or you can type it in the chat.
Thank you, Shakira. I just want to add, going back to the interview and when you're preparing for the interview, not all the time you have to call the organization, because either way, how they're going to communicate with you is a call from HR or an email. So the best thing to do would be usually that information on who you should contact when you arrive should already be communicated to you prior or in the email. I find a lot of times when I send out those invites that my LinkedIn profile just goes sky high because people are doing their research on who their interviewer is going to be. So just take a note of that. So I'm going to give you a few minutes. Sometimes preparing for an interview is very difficult because you don't know, one, what type of structure interview you're going to have, and two, your nerves, and you have to try and control your nerves. But again, I always say an interview is a conversation. That's how I look at it. Doing this for a while, and you have that panel interview. Gone are the days that we have that panel, that panel discussion and that pressure. It is a conversation. The interviewer wants to learn so much about you as the interviewee, and you're better equipped to share that information when you're calm and you're relaxed. And my whole scenario when we're preparing for an interview is to come in it's just now a conversation between 2 people or 3 people and a relaxed environment. So say that, let's talk about a couple of questions that I don't know if there's anything in the chat, but could you read them out to me, Shuka? Was there any questions in the chat?
We have Nikita Wiggins asking, what are the current goals that the company is focused on, and how do I assist in achieving those goals?
Great, that's a great question, because that shows, you want to see how this organization is also going to add value to your future role in the organization. And always any question about your performance, again, it's a two-way street. We are here to help you grow, and we want you to also grow in our organization. So any question about how you're going to be evaluated as your performance management, how you're going to succession planning, how do you see yourself moving, and what steps do you have to take to move through the organization are very, very good questions. Anything else? Okay, we have Dwayne Wilson. Are there
Are there opportunities for advancement or professional development?
Right. So great. Again, going to those questions, asking about the organization, succession planning, growth. Because you want to make sure that you're going to an organization that you can see growth and potential. Gone are the days that, especially with a millennium new workforce coming in, that person stay in a role for 7 years or even 10 years. It's either maybe 1 or 3 or 1 to 5 years. And then you start saying, okay, well, where's my next step? Where do I need that next challenge? Either if you stay here locally within the region or you go internationally. So definitely going back to researching the organization, making sure that this organization from a culture perspective, growth, and just a global perspective or locally, and see where and how the organization is doing. And right now, currently, especially during this pandemic, and seeing how an organization has been performing is critical. So definitely do that research.
We see Faith Prince has raised her hand. She
Okay.
has a question.
Is there another question?
Yes, there is. Faith Prince had raised her hand. I don't know if she still wants to ask the question. You can feel free to do that, Faith. Okay, we'll give her a moment. Next question, are you as the employer willing to invest in training of your employees?
Great question. Great question. Definitely, for example, at our organization, we invest in our auditors, studying to be qualified. So they're working and studying at the same time. Now that's an investment in the individual and also an investment for an organization because they're working, learning, and also giving back. So definitely that's one thing, especially if you're looking to do any type of certification or even just in your performance in your job. If it's something, an organization that supports your personal growth along with your development growth, your business growth is very critical and very important.
Okay, the next question. What are the key characteristics you think a person would need to be a great culture fit for the organization?
Okay. So that's a twofold question, because a lot of times if you've done your homework, and a lot of times a lot of individuals that may already work at a certain particular company, the cultures are very either online or you talk to somebody. So again, it's more for you and what you want, the type of personality that you have and that fit, because gone are the days that you are trying to sell yourself to us as the employer. We also need to sell the organization to you. It needs to be a good fit, because it doesn't make sense coming into an organization and you're not into flexi wear. You like to wear ties all day, or it's a switch. You're not open or free to, and again, a lot of organizations are introducing diversity and inclusion. So a lot of things are changing. Gone are the days, or they're not as stringent, but again, it all depends. Now, if you move to, you want to work overseas, it's a lot more flexible. It's a lot more open. So again, it's finding and taking that time to find what is a good fit for you as an organization. There's some organizations that are very, red tape and very structured in their processes, and all should be, but it's just a little bit more, things take a little bit more time to get through the door. In other words, it's just, again, what is best for you. There's persons that like structured and, and a detailed list to complete. And then there's some organizations that, just do what you need to do. We want to see results at the end. So again, it's doing that homework.
Here we're going to take 2 more questions.
Sure.
We have, what are some of the challenges you see individuals in this particular role encounter?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Again, going back to when you look at everything that's happening and you see how organizations have been managing through this pandemic, that is a huge, and how organizations had to switch from a face-to-face type of work environment to a virtual environment. That's something that you should look about, because not everyone can work from home, and you need to see an organization that can support either working from home, working face to face, and also understanding one personal thing is understanding that work-life balance and that everyone has families. That even if you're married or not married, or children or not children, or even just coming out of from university, that you still have persons that you live with, you have, you might have your parents that you have to be aware of. So just understanding your life, and just understanding using that emotional intelligence, that empathy, and understanding the situation. So organizations that you can see focus on that is really, really good. And that's something that you should focus on as well.
Lovely.
It's a good question.
We have a question here from Faith. What do you see as the most challenging aspect of the job?
Well, usually initial interviews. So that first interview is usually the HR interview, the pre-screen. A lot of times when it comes to, especially with these specialist roles, I would definitely say that's a good question. And I would say, hold that to the subject matter expert within that field. So if it's tax or advisory or audit. However, I would say when it comes to challenges that may face in the role, a lot of times people understand we can always teach a skill, okay? But you can't teach a personality or a soft skill. So a lot of times I say, make sure you have that right attitude. Make sure you have that a soft skill approach, communication, work well with others, work well with teams. If you can work separately, independently, that's fine. But the soft skills you can't teach. You can always teach a skill, but you can't teach that soft skill. So definitely work on your soft skills. How you present yourself, how you communicate is very, 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 very important.
Sorry, Anjanette, I know I said that was the last question, but
Yes.
just one last one. How long do you expect your employees to remain employed within your organization?
Again, it depends on if you're moving upwards. So again, you may have a different career path for yourself. I think nothing is wrong, granted, for that individual who's just happy with what they're doing and they're fine with the job, and you've reached that self-actualization and say, yes, this is the role for me and I'm happy. That's okay. But then there's other folks that say, no, I want to climb that ladder. So again, it's about you upskilling yourself. It's about you looking either locally, regionally, internationally, and saying, okay, well, this organization has branches in London or Canada or wherever, and I want to say, hey, I want to go in for an international transfer, so come in for a couple of years, build my international experience, come back. So again, it all depends on what your growth is, or what your professional or your career plan or path is at that time.
Lovely.
And trust me, it's going to change. I mean, you may have one now, but I think mine changed like 3 or 4 times when I finished, university. Again, it's one of those things that kind of grow.
And Anjanette, are there any other questions you would like to add that you are impressed with when interviewees ask them?
Yeah, I think definitely you have, some really great questions, especially thought through questions about what is, also remember what's happening around currently in our environment. So I like that question about, organizations and how we're managing, through this, pandemic, about your growth. I like to see persons who are looking to develop and grow themselves personally and not just wait on the organization. And I like a work-life balance. Sometimes I ask, what other skills do you do outside? Because I guess that's also what you can share, because because you're not just a academic driven person. I want to see what else you do in your, if you're part of any clubs, if you do any gardening, because it's good to have a well-rounded person. I know that wouldn't be for graduates unless you really like gardening, but things like that, just showing that you are not just one way, but either, you can think or work outside that box, because organizations do a lot of, green initiatives. So we have here, for example, we give back. We do a lot of, Clean Barbados. So we do other things. Social responsibility is critical now for organizations. And that's another thing I wanted to add. So when you're doing your research and you see an organization that's giving back, definitely that is critical. And for you to get involved is very, very important.
Okay, thank you so very much for that.
Good.
Like Anjanette. I see we have a question here from Sarah that we will definitely be speaking on later down in the presentation, sorry. When should you ask about salary for the job you are applying for? We'll definitely address that later, Sarah, so stay tuned for that. And I apologize if it may seem that I'm speaking a little loud. The rain is trying to overpower my voice, but it will not rain today. So we're going to just give the presentation over to Alicia Simmons.
Good morning, afternoon. So we went through a lot already for the afternoon session with Anjanette and Shakira. But through this pandemic, really and truly, we may be saying that there are no more face-to-face interviews. But there are some companies who still wants that face-to-face interview, still keeping a safe distance. And I recommend that once you send in your CV and you got the invitation to the interview, you are inside the game to a certain extent. So I ask that you remain calm. For me, if I get a call for an interview, on my way to the interview, I tend to listen to a lot of calm music. I tend to call a good friend of mine and just take my mind off to a certain extent and remain as calm as possible. I take a few deep breaths before going into the interview room or even the company itself. So I ask that you remain calm. Just look at it, as Anjanette said, it is just a discussion, really and truly, with the interviewer. So remain calm. We ask that you turn your cell phones off. We all know, yes, we in the day of age where we like the telephone and the phones and the text messaging, but it can be a distraction. We all know, for your parents, they know that you're going to interview. That partner in service knows that you're going to interview because you will have told them. So it's only probably for half an hour to an hour. So just turn the phone off so it would not be a distraction. If it is that you need to go to the washroom, go. We don't need you in the interview room just sitting shaking your leg like, oh my gosh, I need to go. If it is that you need to go, take a few minutes and go. Because at the end of the day, you should have been there at the interview 5 to 10 minutes earlier just to calm yourself, look at the surroundings and acquaint yourself with the room. So remain calm. Well, now we're in the pandemic, we try our best not to shake hands, but as soon as this goes away, we go back, hopefully we go back to shaking hands. If it is, and you take the cue from the interviewer. So, because if it is like India, using India as an example, they hardly shake hands. They don't even think they do shake hands based on that culture, and Japan. So just take the cue from the interviewer. And if you're shaking hands, shake with a firm handshake. Normally, some people go with this lame handshake, but your handshake speaks volume. It speaks about who you are. And we in Barbados, we speak a lot of broken English and dialect. People inside the Caribbean speak a lot of dialect, but obviously using an international company, an international firm, they don't understand our dialect. So we ask that you speak standard English and your diction is very clear. Take your time in speaking. As I speak about taking your time, before when you're asked a question, take a few minutes to think of your answer before you give the answer. So just think about it. Don't pause for too long, but just think about it. See if you understand. If you don't, ask for clarity so that you can understand both you guys are on the same page so that you will not answer the question incorrectly. Maintain eye contact, but do not stare. Staring can come across as offensive, but you keep eye contact. We always say the eyes open to the soul. So you keep eye contact and remain calm. As you can hear me, I keep on saying remain calm. Is just a discussion. We try to ask you not to use fillers. Fillers are words like and stuff like that. So do not use filler words. And that is it for the face-to-face. If you have any other questions as it relates to the face-to-face. So we're going to move on to the virtual, since that's what we're going through now. A lot more virtual interviews are happening now. And obviously with our background, our cameras need to be on, obviously, because they need to see who you are, and they want to see who they're speaking to. Keep the eye contact, and before you get to the session, normally what happens is that we send you a link to the interview room, and test the link beforehand. Probably if the call is at 9 on Monday, check it on Friday evening, just to make sure that you have the correct link and it is working. If it's not working, and is not working from the standpoint where the interviewer may send the wrong link, or the link is not working on their part, just send them back an email letting them know that you're having difficulties. But you need to ensure that your headset works, your camera works. And doing a virtual interview is a little different, because you need to look at, and this goes into something totally different, but I was just touch on it. Your camera, make sure that camera is not under your head and looking into your nose. Make sure it is in alignment with your eyes. Make sure you don't have a lot of space around the camera, so you can see a lot on the left and a little on the right. And so make sure that those things are good. Your background, we don't need a distraction. Little tricks. If it's at your home, make sure, some people think that their background is not attractive, but there are some little tricks in the game. Press a nice white sheet and hang it up. Make sure it's pressed though, because obviously we don't want to see the wrinkles. Make sure it's pressed and it's clean to put it behind you. So that's one of the tricks. Now we are home and we're doing virtual interviews. We've seen the media talk about how people are not professionally dressed for virtual meetings. Please, I ask you, please be professionally dressed. And normally, sometimes they are, well, based on the media, you have funny jokes and talking about people and the bottoms and stuff like that. Please be fully dressed. It's not going to take the whole day for the meeting. It's only like an hour. So just be properly dressed. Imagine that you're actually going into the room. And if possible, find a quiet area. Find a quiet area when being in the interview room. So I know, I understand, we already have family members home, we have our siblings home. If it is that you can go by a friend whose house is extremely quiet, or you can go into an office setting where it's quiet, use that time and that space. And if it is that you can't do any better as it relates to children, let the interviewer know that you have a young child home, so that if you hear a child crying in the background, it would not be a surprise. Right now, going through the pandemic, we as interviewers, we are understandable. We understand what is happening. So if a child cries, we may even say, oh, you have a young child, and we ask them to bring, because I think I read a few times back, they had an interview going on and the child was just crying to the point that the interviewer said, oh, you have a young child? And the lady was like, yes. So then the whole conversation just changed to the child, and the child was all in the interview. But that is making the person comfortable in their own space, because at the end of the day, it's just a discussion that we're having to get to know you. Any questions? I don't see anything in the chat, so I can move on.
Shakira's anything?
Shakira? No,
There's no other questions, Shakira? You're on mute,
you're on
Shakira.
mute.
My apologies. Yes, so we have a question here from Renee Plenty. What advice would you give to non-Barbadians who are seeking jobs in Barbados?
You want to answer?
Oh,
that?
do you want to do that now or
After.
do it?
Yeah, we can do it after, that's fine.
Sorry?
We
I,
can do
I
it
was
after, yeah.
Well, Nick's
hey
gonna answer now. Go ahead, Nick.
hey afternoon everyone. Nicholas here. So yeah, so the best thing to do is get a CARICOM Skills National certificate. It varies from country to country where you can acquire them, but if you do a quick Google search, you can see where in your country you would have to source it. So I think in Barbados, you stand correct. I think it's the Accreditation Council,
Yeah.
but I will do a quick search on my end and see where it is that you can get it specifically. But yeah, that is the best thing to do if you are a Caribbean or CARICOM national and you want to work in a different Caribbean territory.
Mhm.
Thank you for that, Nicholas. Yes, I guess we can move on with the presentation.
Okay, good. So it's not all about your physical appearance. We also, as interviewers, we look at your attitude. It also counts. We ask you to give some examples where we are asking you your questions to tell you, say, we ask you a question, the famous question, tell me about yourself. And we ask you to tell us about yourself. And with that, we like to hear some soft skills coming out. You're a fast learner, you pay attention to detail, you're a problem solver. But when you're telling us this, tell it in a story format. So if it is that you're part of an organization, tell us what you've done to achieve this particular skill. And even though we look a lot at your qualifications, your soft skills are very, very important because they are transferable. So if it is, just use an example, you pay a lot detail to, and detail is a funny thing because Shakira spoke about detail and in your CV, you had an error. So even though you pay attention to detail and your CV has errors, then it conflicts. So it speaks a lot to you and who you are. So as an interviewer, you'll be like, you say you pay attention to detail, but you have an error here. What's happening? But you need to show full soft skills and attitude and talk about your energy, you're a doer. Say things like which last project you worked on and the last conference committee you worked on, and tell us the story so it shows that you are a well-rounded individual. We like persons who work under minimal supervision. And when we say minimal supervision, it is not that we are not here to help you or guide you along the way, but we don't have the time to just be policing you. We give you something to do, and we want to be comfortable enough to say, yes, Anjanette, Shakira, Nicholas, they can do it. I can give them this project and they can go with it and run with it. If they fall in difficulty, they come back to us and we talk it through and help them along the way. But minimal supervision is a big factor. We as interviewers tend to ask some questions to get this information out of you. We ask the famous question, tell me about yourself. And when we talk about tell me about yourself, we don't want to know your personal. When I say personal, I don't want to know how many children you have. I don't want to hear where you live. I don't want to hear about your hair. I want to hear more about your skill set. And the question that we may ask again will be a recent experience and that you would have encountered. Or we may even ask you about a problem solving question. What's the last problem that you had to solve? And we ask you about your most proud moment, something that you have done. We ask you about working in teams. So think about some questions that falls under these headings. And if it is, you can shoot us it inside the chat and we will move forward. So let's talk about what we should do after the interview. We submit the CV, we went to the interview, it went well in our opinion. What next? And that is a question that you can ask, and you can ask the interviewer. So after this interview, we went through this, what can I look forward to? Do you have estimated time where you can get back to us? And you can ask questions like that. But if it is that you're not successful, even if before then you may not even know if you're successful or not, send a thank you letter or an email. That goes a long way. When we go through, say, 200 CVs and just one person sends back that thank you, that stands out. It shows us that you care, one, about your development. It cares about the organization. It shows that it speaks about detail also. It speaks about who you are as a person. Just a simple thank you. If you want to elaborate, you can elaborate. But thank you goes a long way. Going forward, put your references on alert. Guarantee you, we will call them. We may even call other people from your past work life or even from school, your lecturers. We will follow up. So just let them know that you're in an interview. So expect a call from this person. So that's something you can look forward to. You have something to add?
Yeah, I just also wanted to add too, I mean, you definitely hold the HR manager or supervisor, whoever is interviewing you, set some expectations for them. You know, find out when you should hear back from them. You know, it's good, it's good to know, especially scheduling yourself, that you know, if they say Monday, then they need to hold them accountable. It's Monday that they're going to get back to you. Because again, if they're now taking 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and within that time frame you haven't heard from them, you know, things happen, but at least hold us accountable as well to say, okay, you know what, we care about you, we respect your time, sorry we haven't gotten back to you, but this is why. At least keep that line of communication open. And if we commit to saying we're going to get back to you in 2 weeks, then hold us accountable as well. Good.
Okay, so if it is that you're not successful, where do we go? We should not lose hope. Let's start there. Don't lose hope. I ask that you remain positive throughout the whole situation. And it may not be that you did a terrible interview. It just may not be what the interviewer is looking for at that point in time. So yes, you're an ideal candidate, but they may need some person to hit the ground running. So there may be another candidate who just took the post because they had just one thing cutting, say probably a technical capability that you just did not have. And I ask that don't be disheartened, remain positive, and really and truly, I ask that you take a look again at your CV. If it is that you need to revamp it, revamp it. If it is that you're missing a few accomplishments, just add them on. But you need to tailor, I'm sure that Shakira would have said this, tailor your CV for the particular post and the particular job that you're going for. And update your LinkedIn. We can't preach this enough. Update your LinkedIn page. Make sure you have a LinkedIn page and make sure it's relevant. That is one of the first social medias that we as interviewers go to, where we ask, or we want you to come in for an interview. We go straight to your LinkedIn page, see what you're doing, what is happening, if it's up to date. So if it is that you do not have a LinkedIn page, I encourage you to have one.
Can I just add also, going back to, even though you don't get the role, again, don't be disheartened, but one thing that also speaks volumes for me is I don't have a problem if you call me back or
Mhm.
you send me an email and ask for feedback. I will make time for individuals like that, because for me as a recruiter, that shows me that you are looking to improve your skill. Not everyone can interview. It's not the easiest, and you got nerves. And trust me, I interviewed somebody that the interview was like, I was a little scary, skeptical about, but they turned to be one of the most knowledgeable, committed persons now working. And I just say an interview can make you and break you, but then there's something that a recruiter can just see through the weeds. And that's what I'm saying. It's not disheartening, and it's going to take practice. But if anyone was to come to me and ask me for some feedback on how the interview went or where they can improve, I definitely can make time for that person. And an HR manager should be able to do that as well.
Okay, so what we would do, we're a little pressed for time, but we want to tackle the question that came up about salaries. That is a very good question and a ticklish question. We always encourage you not to ask about salary on your first interview, because normally you have 2-3 interviews. Do not ask about it on your first interview unless the interviewer brings it up first. Do not bring it up. And if it is that they brings it up, make sure, because you would have done your research, you already know your worth. Give them a range. Do not give them one flat salary, a number, an amount. Give them a range. So I encourage you to give a range, but do not bring it up on your first interview. Don't lie about your qualifications, because as you lie, it comes back and haunt you. Do not lie about your qualifications. Do not speak ill to your past employers and your past posts, because obviously that hinders you to a certain extent in getting the position. You want to add?
Yeah, and just even if you don't have past, because you're now coming out of university, there's definitely teachers. You're going to ask for certain references, but I can definitely say Barbados is small, and you never know who knows who. So again, I would say keep it on the board level, your qualifications, and we ask a lot of times for transcripts. And just because something fell through in your year 2 doesn't mean it's going to deter us from hiring you because of what you did in year 1 or year 2. But again, at your stage right now, your transcripts are important. Definitely your quality or your personality references, or those personal references, will come from your lecturers, because if you had small jobs or you didn't. But again, making those relationships, maintaining those relationships. So if you think that you've had a falling out with a lecturer, or you didn't think about that before, in that lecturer or that professor could be that reference for you for your first job. So always keep that in mind as well.
Okay, so we're going to wrap it up here since it is 1. Do you have any quick questions? We'll probably take 3.
Yes, we have some questions here, Alicia. For individuals over 30 who have been entrepreneurs most of their life or have never been employed, what references should they include on their resume?
Individuals. Sorry, for individuals who are 30 who have been entrepreneurs. Okay, all right, good question. So don't worry about age. I don't like to even think about age. So for entrepreneurs, being your own personal self-employed, you've had business, you worked with other businesses. Definitely those individuals that you've had interactions as a business self-employed individuals, you can ask for those as character references. Okay, you could use those employed and included, right? So definitely personal references, character references. If you're part of a church, if you're part of a organization such as HERMAB or Rotary Club, or those type of clubs, or you've done something in your school, what is the 4-H type of clubs, those are references that can also build.
Okay, will this be considered a good question? Based upon my qualifications, do you think I am eligible for this job?
So do you think I'm a best fit for this job? That's one of the questions I usually ask, why do you think that you're the best candidate for this position? That's a little hard to say or to give you that, that answer right there as a recruiter. I think that I would say you definitely have the skill sets to complete the job, but for me to say upright, yes, you have the skill set, because we wouldn't have brought you in for the interview if we didn't think that you were at least eligible to do this job. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure if this was mentioned, but should I walk with the questions or answers, or am I to memorize?
Okay. I actually had a note down, and I've had people come and ask me, can I take notes in the interview? And I think that's great. One time a lady, she says, can I ask a couple questions? When she opened her notebook, it was a page and a half. So that there's nothing wrong to me. That shows that you came prepared. Bring your notebook, even if it's virtual or face to face. But out of just to make sure, because every recruiter is different, just say ask the question, can I take notes? Because they may, if they can't see you from a virtual perspective, they might think you're doing something else, you're not paying attention. For example, a lot of times I write down notes while I'm talking. Before I start my interview, I would let you know that I'm taking notes, because respectfully, I should be looking at you, eye contact as much as we can virtually or face to face, but I don't want to disrespect you thinking that I'm not paying attention. So I would say that up front, that I'm taking notes, and it would just go both ways.
All right, so we're just going to wrap up here. We're strapped for time right now, but thank you so very much, everyone, for attending our presentation on interviewing techniques. If you have any more questions and you would like to reach out to any of us, our information is here. You can find us on LinkedIn or via email to ask any more questions. Thank you so very much for your time, everyone.
Okay.
Enjoy.
Also remember, there's the next session coming up with HERMAB on Wednesday at 12 noon, October 21st, webinar 3 of 4. The next webinar will be personal branding for the young professional, and October 28th is webinar 4, would be global careers. Both sessions are going to be great, so please don't miss them. Thank you.